Inaleta mabadiliko na mbinu mpya za uchaguzi yenye wadhifa wa mipaka. Chagua Kenya unayoitaka, usirudie yale makosa.
Many thanks indeed for joining us here on the Countdown with IEBC. I'm Johnson Mwakazi. Today we're looking at the mock elections that were conducted in March this year, and to tell us more about the lessons that were learned and of course the purpose of the exercise is Commissioner Albert Bwire. Many thanks indeed, Bwana Commissioner. Thank you so much. Yes, we are going to basically focus on the mock election. But before we get to that, there were interesting emerging issues from last time's show when we were talking about the delimitation process. And Vincent from Luanda says, after how many years will the electoral boundaries be reviewed again?
If you look at Article 89 of our Constitution, it is very clear that delimitation is supposed to be done between 8 to 12 years. So the next delimitation will come in after 8 years at the minimum. Our friend will have to wait until 2020, and that will be after the census of 2019, because it is the census population that is used in the delimitation of constituencies.
The second emerging issue is actually from John Oluoch from Nakuru. He says, can the Commission change the names of lakes, rivers, and other landmarks?
That does not fall under IEBC mandate. We cannot change the names of lakes, rivers, or even mountains. That is something that should be done perhaps by the community through discussions with their political leadership or general leadership in that locality. Otherwise, it is not within the province of IEBC.
Let's now get into the nitty-gritties of the big topic today, the mock elections. Kindly let me welcome you to the set. So thank you so much once again for joining us, Bwana Commissioner. You know, one big question really stands out is, what is a mock election?
A mock election is a trial election. What we are basically trying to do is to mimic what will happen at the general election. So what we did in Kajiado North and Malindi was to try and do a general election, but on a very lower scale, using a sample of 2 constituencies. And the reason we chose 2 constituencies because we wanted constituencies that have both an urban component and a rural component. Besides that, we also wanted constituencies that have the elite component and the illiterate components. We're also looking at people who are settled, and perhaps for a place like Kajiado, you are looking at people who keep moving around, the pastoralists. So we wanted to test all this through our mock election.
Let's just get to hear some of the comments. I managed to go to talk to people in the streets, and they had lots of questions, lots of concerns from, you know, what's the main purpose of the mock elections. Let's kindly take a look and of course listen to some of them.
Sasa hiyo mock election venye imefanywa, sema imefanywa Kajiado na wapi?
Na Malindi.
Kajiado na Malindi. Huko ni Kenya peke yake. Huko si Kenya peke yake. Kuna watu wengi, kuna Mandera, Garissa, watu wanasafa. Mbona hujatembea Mandika huko? Kwa saizi venye tumeona hii mock elections hivi venye imefanywa, kulikuwa na violence. Sasa how sure are we kama tufanye hii 2012 hii election itakuwa kama hiyo 2007?
Why, of course, the 2 constituencies? Perhaps if you could have added other constituencies, people would feel, you know, we've been represented.
The reason we chose the 2 constituencies is because of expansiveness of the 2 constituencies. And therefore, whether we took 30 or 2, we would have gotten what we were looking for. So 2 is quite representative of what we were looking to achieve, because we were testing quite a number of objectives, which in our opinion, those objectives were met.
Why didn't we just wait for the big day and just go vote instead of having a mock election and then telling us, you know what, next year, let's go for another one?
If you look at the elections we are going to have, we are looking at 6 elective positions. This is unlike the past where we've had 3 elective positions. And therefore, One of the reasons why we wanted to go there, try the mock elections, was, number one, determine how long it takes a voter to cast the 6 papers. One, if he's assisted, and 2, if he's not assisted.
There was also the question of how much you spent in relation to the mock elections. How much did you spend?
We spent close to 67 million for the 2 constituencies. That is in total. So an average of 33.5 million per constituency.
That brings us to your budget that was, you actually moved it from 41 billion to now 31 billion, and people are thinking, hey, I mean, that's a lot of money comparing to other elections in other countries. We're actually holding one of the most expensive elections. You are a banker by profession. Would you justify why the 30 billion shillings comes in?
For people to understand where the 31.5 billion comes from, you need to look at how many polling stations we are going to have. Having done the mock elections, this gave us the basis on which to decide how many polling stations we are going to have during the general election. And from the time you walk into a polling station to the time you walk out, the average we had for elites was 5 minutes and assisted voters 15. And therefore, if you look at those 2, you're able to tell that on average, people will require close to 8 to 10 minutes. And therefore, looking at our target of 18 million voters, we said for a reasonable number of people to vote within 11 hours, you require 350 to 400 voters in that polling station. And therefore, that informs our reason for having 45,000 polling stations. And therefore, if you look at the budget has one cost driver called polling stations, because it is on the basis of polling stations that you get the number of human resource required for the general election.
The mock elections really stood out to unravel the nightmare of dealing with 6 elective posts and all that. You introduced the voters to 2 voting systems, the 3-ballot system and the 6-ballot system. Can you just take us briefly through the voting systems?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is true. We tried to test 2 models, the 3-ballot box model and the 6-ballot box model. With the 3-ballot box model, one of the challenges that we got was voters being confused. They would mix the ballot papers. And that was something that we thought was very difficult for people, and especially those who could not read, because we had the names of those elective positions on our transparent ballot boxes. Now, if you find that confusing, then that means you look at the second option. How was the second option? The second option, because of color coding, was very easy. Very few voters were confused by that, because they knew if it was green or blue, they knew who that was. Yeah. So basically, looking at the 2 models, the easier of these 2 for purposes of a general election is the 6-ballot box model. When it comes to counting of ballot papers, the 3-ballot box model is a huge challenge, because 1, you must sort out the papers according to the elective positions before you again sort them according to the people they voted for, and then start the recount, start the counting of how many ballots or papers each elective position got, or each individual contestant got. So those were the challenges of 3-ballot box model. However, if you go to the 6-ballot paper model, this was easy, because all you needed to do is, if you get the presidential ballot box, all the papers there are expected to be for the presidential contestants, and therefore you sort ones according to who has been voted for. And that was straightforward, unlike 3.
Thank you so much. For now, we'll just take a short break, but when we come back, we'll still delve deeper into the issue of the mock elections. Was it really worth it after all? Stay tuned. So, welcome back. We're basically still talking about the mock elections, and with me is Commissioner Albert Bwire. Thank you so much for joining us. We're basically talking about the whole process of the mock elections, but looking at, of course, and listening to some of the comments from the people, there's one thing that really stands out: security. Well, of course, in Kajiado North, everything was all right, but in Malindi, there was violence. So, how assured are voters of their security during the elections?
We are working with the government, and we are aware the government is also putting enough modalities and logistics in place so that come the general elections, that will not be repeated. We know the threats being posed. The government, of course, understands that threat, and therefore the government is doing everything possible to make sure that that threat does not disrupt the upcoming elections.
Mm-hmm. Because there's another concern whereby, in as much as you've been given the mandate to now handle election irregularities and all that, there's still that lack of confidence whether you have the ability to really, enforce certain actions against people who are bent on disrupting the elections.
IEBC has prosecutorial powers. It has investigative powers. But what you need to understand is this: we have to work with government, and especially where we have threats to security, we must work with government. And that is basically what we are trying to do. Those threats are there. We work with government. Now, what is going to happen is this: as we work with government agencies, we'll complement each other so that if there is any perhaps insecurity or perhaps a criminal activity, then of course the government arm has to come in to assist IEBC, because IEBC does not have as many policemen. We'll just have a few attached to IEBC to do our investigative and prosecutorial functions. But on the ground, we are dependent on government, and we are aware the government has enough personnel. If I may just add, as we go towards the general elections, we've already talked to government. We've told them we require between 90,000 to 100,000 security officers around election time. And of course, government has taken initiative to even recruit more officers so that come general election, such threats are neutralized, and we have sufficient security personnel to take care of the security of voters.
Looking at the mock elections in Kajiado North and Malindi, in relation to the color of ballot boxes, and of course we have now this new other thing on the other side is the colors that political parties have. What would you say about the connection? Because a voter might be confused, might think, you know what, my political party has this color and that ballot box has that particular color, so I'm meant to vote in this particular person.
Mwakazi, one thing that we are trying to do right now is to engage political parties. So before we settle on the colors that we are going to use for the general election, we'll have to consult with the political parties so that we agree. And after the agreement, that is the only time we can color code the leads of the ballot boxes.
We're talking about 2 months after the mock election exercise took place. What are your current findings?
Of course, from the mock elections, we had a lot of learning points. Perhaps one of the biggest learning points was the assisted voters. This, in our opinion, we believe is going to be a challenge, because assisted voters were taking up to 15 minutes. Now, 15 minutes to serve one person, theoretically would mean 4 voters in 1 hour, and we only have 11 hours to vote. So this is our biggest challenge. So what we intend to do is to profile. When we start voter registration, we'll try to profile the type of voters that we have, so that we put in place adequate measures to ensure the vote moves smoothly and at a pace that we are sure if there are 350 or 400 registered voters and they all turn up, they'll vote within the 11 hours. the challenges of assisted voters notwithstanding.
How effective was the process in a scale of 1 to 10? Because, I mean, it was a mock election, so perhaps even the turnout of voters was a bit lower. And would you say, you know what, this is now, we can use this as a representation of what would perhaps happen in 2013?
If you examine what our objectives were, I can give IEBC 9 out of 10. This is what we did. Mock election went on smoothly, though we had a few challenges in Malindi, but you have 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 is basically a distinction.
Of course, there were plans that you have initially, even before you conducted the mock elections. What have you realized that you will do differently come 2013?
Perhaps one of the issues that we are grappling with are the challenges from members of the society that are fiscally challenged. We realized we had polling stations on a second floor or a third floor in one of the polling stations, and this was quite a challenge for our brothers getting to those floors. So what we've done is, when we do the voter registration, we'll again get the details so that we make adequate arrangements for these people to vote. That is for the fiscally challenged. Let's look at, for example, members of society who are challenged because of sight. The papers that we have means that you are able to read it and then mark. So what we are trying to look at is perhaps have a few ballot papers in Braille, so that even if this person is challenged, he's able to make his independent choice without being assisted, because then he's able to read who that person is, and then he can mark.
As we look forward for the forthcoming general elections, anything should we expect anything in terms of another mock election?
We do not have intentions of holding another mock election because of the cost implications. And in any case, all the lessons that we wanted to learn, we were able to learn them from Malindi and the Kajiado North mock election. And therefore, having another mock election perhaps will not give us a better idea than what we already have.
Thank you so much, Albert Bwire, for your time and, of course, the information that you've given unto us. Very important, because we don't want to go to the election date without us being equipped with the knowledge that will enable us to make it a success as far as the election is concerned. Of course, we are glad and, of course, always appreciate your comments, your views and questions. You have any questions, you can always send them to our Facebook account, our Twitter handle. They're all scrolling on your screen right now. So many thanks indeed for joining us. Until next time, keep it the countdown with IEBC. I'm Johnson Mwakazi.
Chagua Kenya unayoitaka. Yale